Chapter 23 of Tilda Jane's Orphans. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gloria Begeman, Somerville, South Carolina. Tilda Jane's Orphans by Marshall Saunders. Chapter 23. Perletta Puzzles Her Friends. It was late that same night. Tilda Jane and Perletta had seen Grandpa safely in his bower, as Hank called the harness room. It was really a very neat little bedroom now, and the spectacle of Grandpa tucked in bed with his beloved pup at his feet was so affecting to Tilda Jane that she gave a squeal of rapture, and ran to embrace again and again the young dog, who was so sleepy from his travels that he impatiently opened his mouth and bit at her, to bid her begone. "Let him alone, little girl," said Grandpa. He's snappy like most folks when they're fagged out. "Good night and pleasant dreams to you." "And Perletta," said 'Tilda Jane softly. "Oh, add Perletta, Grandpa." "And Perletta," he said crossly. "Now get out, both of you." Perletta, who stood in the doorway holding a lantern in her hand, and not glowering at him as she used to, even when she was doing him some favor, but now benevolent and patient in expression, uttered a pleased and surprised, "Good night, sir," then led the way to the ladder by which she and 'Tilda Jane ascended to their respective sleeping places. Grandpa had his big bell by him, as he used to have in the burned house, but he was so well now that he never had occasion to ring it in the night. 'Tilda Jane found Oona sleeping peacefully on the bed in her sweet-smelling room. The loft was pretty well empty of hay now, but the odor remained, and whether it was owing to that, or to the good supper the little creature had taken, she was certainly reposing well, and with none of the twitchings of flesh that Mr. Waysmith so much dreaded. 'Tilda Jane undressed, said her prayers, and was soon sleeping soundly beside her new pet, while Gippy reposed in his box in the corner. Poacher, the guardian of the family in Hank's absence, lay downstairs by the front barn door that had been barred for the night. "You'll get plenty of air through the windows at night," Hank had said before he went away. "Don't leave the doors open. Some tramp might sneak in and frighten you." The whole family slept but Perletta. She was wide awake, and, leaning far out the window in her end of the loft, stared out at the road, faintly gray and dusty in the moonlight, and at the silver line of the river beyond. Her thoughts, however, were not on the beauty of nature, as 'Tilda Jane's would have been. Perletta was too material to experience heartfelt and comforting raptures over a sunset or moonrise. She was rejoicing in the possession of a secret, a most important and substantial sort of secret, and, with irrepressible chuckles, she gazed down into the cellar of the new house, where the masons were carrying on their work of repair. "I could fix 'em up better nor they're planning to be fixed," she muttered gleefully, "if they'd let me. They'll hev to do the squar thing, though. Who's that comin'? A man, as I'm alive." It was true. As she stood leaning out the window and soliloquizing, a man had entered their yard, and was swinging up at a good pace toward the barn door. He was carrying a suitcase in his hand, and, as her eye fell on it, her expression of alarm changed to one of cunning and relief. "It's him," she said, "and if lil' 'Tilda Jane don't wake up and poke in, I'll hev some fun a badgerin' him to even up for the time he badgered me." and slyly withdrawing her head from the window, she took up the lighted lantern beside her, and went stealthily down the ladder to the barn floor. The man was knocking softly. "Hello there! Hello! Didn't I see a light? Let me in." "Who's a knockin'?" asked Perletta in sepulchral tones. "It's me," replied a well-known voice. "And who's me?" she asked with a grin of reminiscence. "Hey there, you, Perletta," was the reply. "You think you're awful funny, don't you? Open this door and let me in." "Get out, you tramp," she replied with assumed wrath. "The boss of this ranch is away. He told me to stand guard as I was the biggest." "Said he? Perletta, you're to let no one in at night, and if thieves come, mind you stand in front of Dad and Tilda and let 'em hit you fust." "Oh, swallow that nonsense," said Hank impatiently, "and open this door, do you hear?" Perletta was so convulsed with laughter that she had to set her lantern on the floor. Then, composing herself, she seized Poacher by the neck as he was throwing himself against the door in transports of delight. "Your voice," she said gruffly, "is like the boss's, but I mistrust you. He's off on a fishing trip. We've got valuables in here, a sewing machine, and nice black furniture, and a new dog with $1,000,000, etcetery, etcetery." "Now, look here, Perletta," said Hank in a rage, "if you don't open this door, I'll knock it down." "You can't do it," she chuckled. "Go away, Mr. Robber and a thief. Honest folkses is in bed and rogues is a running." Hank, in exasperation, started such a pounding on the door that Perletta, seizing the lantern, fled toward the ladder and climbed to her perch in the hayloft. 'Tilda Jane, awakened by the noise, felt confusedly for Oonah, who was yelping with alarm. Then she began to crawl out of bed, her first thought for grampa. Suddenly the lantern was thrust through the curtains of her doorway, and Perletta, gasping with laughter, ejaculated, "It's Hank. Go let him in." 'Tilda Jane, with a hasty pat on Oonah's back, threw on some clothing, swung herself down the ladder with a celerity born of much going up and down, and was soon unbarring the door for Hank, who was tired and in more of a temper than she had ever before seen him in. "Where's that idiot, that simpleton, that witless lout?" he cried as he stamped into the barn. "If I'm spared till morning, she'll march." "Oh, Hank, dear, you don't mean Perletta," exclaimed 'Tilda Jane in dismay. "Don't say anything against her. Wait till I tell you how good she's been." "Good? She's a beast, a demon," said Hank wildly. "I never did like her. I hate her now. To shut a fellow out of his own house in the dead of night." "Did she try to keep you out?" asked 'Tilda Jane. "Oh, Hank, isn't she waggish? She's trying to pay you back for that trick you got off on her when she came back after running away with Puppy and the pigeon." "How dare she?" spluttered Hank. "I'll teach her. Good London! Hear that man roaring, and that bell a-ringing. Yes, sir, I'm coming." "Hurry, Hank, hurry. I hate to have him worked up," and 'Tilda Jane, lantern in hand, flew toward the harness room, where Grampa and Handy Andy were both yelling at the top of their lungs to the accompaniment of the dinner bell. "The barn is on fire. The pup and I will burn alive," shouted Grampa with one leg out of bed. "Help me, someone. Oh, I feel so feeble." "Get back, sir, get back," cried Hank, dashing in before 'Tilda Jane. "The barn ain't on fire and ain't going to be, and you know it. You just want a mite of attention. Get into bed. There's a lady coming. Your son will wrap you up." and he affectionately bundled his father back to his warm nest, trying meanwhile to ward off attacks from the relieved and delighted Andy, who was trying to devour him with caresses. Grandpa submitted blissfully to his tucking in. He had his son back, and the pup in addition. Now he was an entirely happy man. Still, there was one drop of bitterness in his cup, now that he thought of it. "You talk of a lady, son," he mumbled with concern. "You ain't married, be you?" "Married!" ejaculated Hank scornfully. "I'm pretty daring, but I dassent bring another female into this nursery, which is alive with 'em already. How do you s'pose Tilda and Perletta would greet a lady? Andy, get down, I say, sir. I'm glad you've got your dog back, and he's riotous to see me. It's kind of cheering to have something show joy, if it's only dumb critters." And he caressed Poacher, who was affectionately licking his dusty shoes, as he could reach no other part of his person. "Only dogs and my old dad think anything of poor Hank." "I guess you're tired, brother," said 'Tilda Jane calmly. "You know how much Perletta and I think of you." "Perletta, that witch!" exclaimed Grampa, who, now that his fit of temper and fright was over, was beginning to get the drift of things, and to understand that 'Tilda Jane was the lady Hank had referred to. "What's the matter with that girl? She's powerful cheeky lately. Seems as if a new spirit had got into her." "I wouldn't call it cheeky, sir," suggested 'Tilda Jane mildly. "She's out more, but she hasn't been cheeky in the house, not since Hank left, till tonight when he came home." "So I'm the one that's upsetting her, am I?" said Hank resentfully. "Well, Miss Perletta can go, we'll find another girl." "What made you come home so soon, boy?" asked Grampa. "Your time ain't up. You've only been gone a week." "I guess I got homesick," said Hank sulkily. "Beds were hard, and rooms were stuffy, and fish scarce wherever I went, and food not fit to eat. I got dyspepsy and begun to hate everyone, and thinks I, those masons are fooling Dad about the cellar, I'll bet, and so I thought I'd come home, and this is the welcome I get. 'Tilda Jane, why don't you go to bed instead of standing there like a sick ghost?" "Good night, then," she said sweetly. "Sleep well, brother and Grampa. I'll leave the lantern. I can go up the ladder in the dark." As she climbed upward, she muttered, "I never knew before that it made a man so mad to be locked out of his own barn. But I guess he'll be all right in the morning. Why, Oonah!" And she greeted the delighted little dog who had slipped off the bed and was waiting for her in the dark at the top of the ladder. "Is that your soft tongue licking my hand? I thought it must be Gippie. Good girlie, I won't leave you again." Her philosophical prediction with regard to Hank came true. He was all right in the morning, and acted as if he were quite ashamed of his surliness the night before. He overwhelmed 'Tilda Jane with attentions, and even threw a forgiving glance toward Perletta, who was warily keeping in the background. "'Pon my appetite," he said feelingly, as he pushed his chair back from the breakfast table set in the middle of the barn floor. "I ain't tasted a meal like that since I left home, and it's simple enough, too." "You're a regular homebody," said Grampa, whose delight at having him back was too strong to be concealed. "Your mother was," he added in a lower key. "You take it from her." Hank looked quickly at him. His father rarely spoke of the mother, dead now so many years ago that Hank barely remembered her. "I guess she was a pretty good woman, warn't she, Dad?" he said. "I just call up having her lay her hands on my head." "She was a good woman," said Grampa, and his old head dropped on his breast. Then raising it, he said keenly, "And I, for one, don't want to see no other in her place while I'm alive." Hank smirked at Handy Andy, who was going round underneath the table, untying everybody's shoelaces. "Dad, you've got a wholesale fear of my getting married, but don't you fret. I ain't likely to set no daughter-in-law over you. This is your house as long as you live." "If you married, Hank," said 'Tilda Jane wistfully, "would I have to leave?" "No, sirree," said the young man, striking the breakfast table with his fist. "Yes, she would," cried Perletta, advancing from the back of the barn and speaking in a cross and surly voice. Hank looked her up and down with mingled amusement and disdain. Then he said, "And please, who would support you two babes in the wood?" "I'd do it," replied Perletta, drawing up her big frame majestically. "What on?" pursued Hank with twinkling eyes. "Money," responded Perletta oracularly. Then she withdrew into the shade of a clump of lilacs by the back barn door. "Dad," said Hank, turning to his father, "what a pickle you've got me into with these young females on account of your talk of marriage, and I ain't got no more idea of such a thing than you have." "I guess you're a free man," said grampa tartly. "You ain't beholden to no females about what you'll do or not do." "I ain't beholden," said Hank, "but mark me, it ain't wise nor agreeable to stir up any female beyond teething age. 'Let sleeping dogs lie' is a good saying, and I add, let sleeping womankind lie too, till they choose to wake themselves. Now, I'm a-going to interview the masons out there, then we'll trot down by the river to talk over my troubles with the pigs. I see they've led Poacher down already. My, it's queer not to have to hurry off to the mill. Fine, too. You don't enjoy rest unless you have worked, and you don't properly enjoy work unless you rest a bit once in so often. Guess I'll take milkweed." And getting up, he went to the door of her stall, opened it, and allowed her to follow him like a dog down to the river. Perletta was still sulking at the back of the barn. 'Tilda Jane was smiling sedately, and after calling to Hank, "Walk up and down the willow path, brother. I'll run down and see you as soon as I finish the dishes," she hurriedly began to clear off the breakfast table. A short time later, Hank, with Poacher at his heels, was pacing up and down the river bank. His hands were in his pockets, he was whistling cheerily, watching meanwhile Milkweed, who was munching the sweet meadow grass, and the pigs, who were in their favorite mud bath near a tangle of alders. Hearing an answering whistle, he looked up and saw 'Tilda Jane stepping carefully down the bank, holding Oonah under her arm. "Hank," she said when she got near him, "will you send Poacher to play with the pigs? I want Oonah to walk about a spell." "Absquatulate, skedaddle, make tracks," said Hank to the hound, who, laying his ears back, went to join Dodge and Grappler. The two pigs received him with amiable grunts, and even climbed out of their bath to touch him with their snouts in a friendly fashion. "Now, dear, pace up and down behind us," said 'Tilda Jane to the small timid dog, and she set her on the well-worn path by the river. Oonah, with ears clapped tight to her head, tail between her legs, and quivering with excitement and anxiety, followed closely, her nose close to 'Tilda Jane's ankles. Seeing that she would take no harm from the exercise, 'Tilda Jane turned to Hank. "Brother, I can't tell you how glad I am to have you back. I've been so upset about Perletta since you went away that I didn't know what to do." "What's the matter with the girl?" asked Hank carelessly. "Why, Hank, she's getting money somewhere, lots of it." "Money!" he ejaculated, stopping short. "Yes, brother, and she goes to town nearly every day. I wish she'd tell us what she's doing." "Why didn't you ask her?" "I did, brother. I said, 'Perletta, I'm bothered about you. Is everything all right about what you're doing?'" "What did she say?" "She said time would tell." "You say she has lots of money. How much? $5? "$5!" exclaimed 'Tilda Jane, rolling her eyes toward some men who were passing in a boat on the river. "Why, she's just bought grampa a fur-lined coat that cost I don't know how much. I know she said they took $30 off, 'cause she got it out of season. They don't like to pack their furs away now at the beginning of summer on account of moths." "She bought Dad a fur-lined coat," blurted Hank, taking his hands out of his pockets and looking at them as searchingly as if he might find written on them an explanation of the mystery. "Why, sissy, you can't buy a decent fur-lined coat less than $90 or $100, and usually they're a heap more." "Well, Hank, she's got money left, for I saw a roll of bills sticking out of her purse. It wouldn't shut, and she had a piece of twine round it, and brother," she added shamefacedly, "she's given me something too." "What is it?" "A party dress," she said. "It's pink silk, and awful pretty, but too bold for me. Folks would stare." "A pink silk dress," repeated Hank. "Why, how you talk. And what has she got for me?" "Nothing. She said she asked her lawyer what to buy for you, and he said you were a young man, and if any presents were to be made, you should give them to her, not she to you." "Well, I be jiggered," said Hank in utter mystification. "Her lawyer, and who is he? I want to know." "Mr. Joseph Whiting, old Joseph Whiting, the smartest and honestest lawyer in town, and a howling aristocrat. You don't mean to say she's been to him?" "Yes, Hank, she showed me his name at the foot of a letter." "Signed big and full with a lot of curlycues at the end?" asked Hank excitedly. "Yes, brother, just like snakes." "That's old Whiting's signature. I see it a dozen times a week at the mill, but what under the sun would he be writing to Perletta for?" "Now, Hank," remarked 'Tilda Jane firmly, "Perletta hasn't been stealing. She isn't that kind. I was afraid of it at first, then I thought what a goose I was. Perletta is good. I feel it." "Course she is," said Hank kindly. "She's a regular zany, but the girl is honest enough. You can tell by her eye. I guess I know what it is, 'Tilda. She's come into some money. There ain't a soul in this town would give her a dime." "I expect that's it," said 'Tilda Jane soberly. "Yet at the same time I feel kind of uneasy about her. She isn't spending it right. She's like a child, Hank. Can't you do something?" "Is she doing her work all right?" "Yes, except when she goes to town a lot." "Well, we hired her to do certain work. If she does it, we can't complain. If she goes too much, tell her you can't spare her. Her money is her private concern. I can't meddle. That ain't business, but I'd return the pink silk, sissy. Tell her you told me about it, and I ain't willin' for you to keep it." "She'll feel bad." "Can't help that. She ain't going to make a ninny of you too." Do you suppose Grandpa will take the coat? Wait till she offers it. He'll settle her pretty quick." "But, Hank, she's awful good to make such presents." "'Course she is, but Dad and I ain't willin' to fatten off any poor goose cap like Perletta. Let her keep her money for herself. She ain't likely got much. You hold on a bit. I'll keep my eyes open, and I warrant you I'll make some discoveries in Perletta's direction." End of chapter 23.